Have you ever wondered why someone falls in love with you? Not just casually liking you, but being magnetically drawn in a way that even they can't explain. Maybe it wasn't about your looks, your job, or your charm. It was something else, something deeper. I've been thinking about this lately, not just from my own life, but from watching the way people come together, and just as often, fall apart. And I've come to believe people don't fall in love with you for the reasons you think. At least not at first. They fall for what you represent, for the part of themselves that they've forgotten, for the possibility that you might carry something they've lost or never had to begin with. Carl Jung once said, "We don't fall in love with the person, we fall in love with the image they awaken in us." And the older I get, the more that makes sense. Before we dive in, if you find comfort in honest conversations like this, hit subscribe. We share stories that don't just pass time, they help make sense of it. You reflect something they lack. Let me tell you a story. Years ago, I met a woman who was the very opposite of me. She was spontaneous, expressive, and moved through the world like everything was poetry. I was more reserved then, careful with my words, cautious with emotions. And yet, the pull I felt toward her was intense. It wasn't just attraction. It felt like freedom, like stepping into a version of myself I hadn't met yet. What I realized much later was that I didn't just love her. I loved what she represented. That boldness, that fluidity. It was a piece of myself I had kept buried. She wasn't just a partner, she was a mirror. This is something Jung called projection. It's when we meet someone and unknowingly see in them something that's missing in us. A kind of emotional recognition. And here's the truth. Sometimes people fall in love with you because you carry something they haven't yet developed in themselves. Maybe you're grounded when they feel lost. Maybe you're open when they've shut down. Maybe your calm feels like shelter, or your passion feels like a spark. You become, in their eyes, a missing puzzle piece. But not necessarily because of who you are, but because of what they need. It's not about flattery, it's about resonance. The familiar stranger, archetypes and soul recognition. Have you ever met someone and felt like you've known them your whole life, even though you just locked eyes minutes ago? There's a strange familiarity, like meeting a character from a dream you don't remember having. This feeling isn't just chemistry, it's ancient. Jung called it the anima and animus, archetypes of the idealized feminine and masculine that live deep in each of us, shaped by our early experiences, our culture, even our myths. It's why a man might be drawn to a woman who reminds him, subtly, of a quality he associates with softness, creativity, or emotional depth. Not because she is those things, but because she activates the image he's always carried of what love should feel like. And the same is true for women. She may feel an inexplicable pull towards someone who seems strong, yet tender, someone who stirs something familiar inside her. It's not about his haircut or the way he stands. It's about something deeper, something symbolic. This is why love sometimes feels like destiny, like fate just dropped someone in your path. But Jung would say, it's not fate. It's your unconscious recognizing itself in someone else. You don't fall in love with the person. You fall in love with the symbol, with the story you've been holding inside you, quietly, for years. And the moment someone matches that story, even a little, your heart lights up. But here's where it gets tricky. That person doesn't know they're playing a role in your inner mythology. They're just being themselves. And eventually, their real self begins to show. Their quirks, their contradictions, their very human imperfections. And suddenly, the spell starts to break. Not because they did anything wrong, but because they can't keep being the fantasy you projected onto them. That's not their fault. That's human. When the illusion fades, why love falls apart. It often starts with something small. Maybe they forget your birthday, or they make a comment that cuts deeper than it should. Maybe they don't react the way you imagined they would, don't comfort you the way you hoped. And suddenly, the person who once seemed perfect starts to shift in your eyes. You begin to see the cracks, the parts that don't fit the story you wrote about them, the pieces that don't match the image. That's when the real test begins, not just of the relationship, but of your self-awareness. Because when love is built on projection, the moment reality intrudes, the bond begins to wobble. Not because love was false, but because it wasn't whole. We don't just fall in love with people, we fall in love with what they awaken in us. But once we stop feeling that activation, or once they stop meeting that internal blueprint, it can feel like we've been misled. And yet, they haven't changed. They've just started being real. We often mistake this moment as betrayal. But it's not betrayal, it's a mirror turning clear. The fog of fantasy lifting. And what's left is a choice. Do we love the person for who they are, or for who they helped us temporarily feel like? And this, I think, is why so many passionate loves burn hot and end in silence. Not because people stopped caring, but because the illusion collapsed under the weight of human truth. Love as a catalyst, the people who change us. Not every love story is meant to last, but that doesn't mean it was a mistake. Some people come into your life like a spark, bright, beautiful, and brief. They rattle you, they inspire you, they open up parts of you didn't even know were locked. And when they leave, they don't just leave behind silence, they leave behind change. Jung believed that these encounters, no matter how chaotic or painful, serve a greater purpose. They push us toward wholeness. He called it the process of individuation, the journey of becoming the truest version of yourself. Sometimes love isn't about building a life together. Sometimes love is the mirror that shows you who you're becoming. The people who hurt you, the ones who confused you, even the ones who broke your heart, they weren't accidents. They were carriers of meaning. They forced you to confront something you were avoiding, or gave you a glimpse of something you still needed to grow into. And yes, some of those people might never know what they meant to you. They may not even know the role they played, but your soul does, and maybe that's enough. So, if you've ever looked back at a relationship that ended and wondered what it was all for, consider this. Maybe it wasn't about the relationship at all. Maybe it was about what it awakened in you. Awareness changes everything, breaking the pattern. Have you ever felt like you keep falling for the same type of person? Different faces, same story. It starts with excitement, hope, maybe even a sense of destiny. And then, somewhere along the way, it unravels in familiar, painful ways. This isn't bad luck. It's your unconscious trying to finish a sentence you haven't fully read yet. We repeat what we don't understand. We seek out the same patterns, not because they're good for us, but because they're familiar, because they stir something inside us that feels unfinished. But here's the good news. Awareness changes everything. When you begin to understand your own patterns, your projections, your inner images, the stories you're carrying from childhood or heartbreak, you begin to see more clearly. You stop chasing someone to complete you and start noticing who brings peace instead of chaos, growth instead of confusion. You begin to love not from emptiness, but from wholeness. And suddenly, love feels different. It feels quieter, maybe, but also more steady, more real. Because now, you're not falling in love with a fantasy. You're meeting someone as they are and offering them the same honesty in return. So why do people fall in love with you? Maybe it's because you carry a quality they've buried or forgotten. Maybe you reflect a version of themselves they're longing to become. Maybe, without even trying, you unlock a door inside them they didn't know was still closed. And maybe you've done the same. The people you've loved, the ones who changed you, confused you, maybe even broke your heart. They weren't just chapters in your story. They were turning points. They showed you where you were growing and where you were still healing. Love, in all its beauty and ache, is not just about finding the right person. It's about discovering the parts of yourself that come alive in their presence. And when you begin to see love this way, not as a rescue mission, not as a perfect match, but as a mirror, you stop asking, "Do they complete me?" and start asking, "What part of me is waking up right now?" Because the truth is, you don't just fall in love with someone else, you fall in love with the version of yourself that love helps you uncover. So the next time you feel that pull, magnetic connection that seems to come out of nowhere, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, is this love or is this recognition? What in me is rising to the surface? Because that's where the real story begins. Not with them, but with you.